Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting Australian Indian Radio and Brisbane Indian Times Facebook daily live presentation. And it's a Friday. Yes, it is Friday, and this is going to be the Father's Day weekend. So let's take a look at what the Father's Day weekend weather is going to be looking like. With that, we'd like to welcome Dilraj.
Good morning, everyone. So the weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum of 25 degree. Brisbane area is mostly sunny and there are no chances of rain. Light winds becoming north to northeasterly 15 to 25 km per hour in the middle of the day. Fire danger is high. Sun protection is recommended till 2:40 p.m. UV index predicted to reach 7, that is high. And tomorrow minimum will be 14 and maximum will be 27. Brisbane area will be mostly sunny and there are 5% chances of rain. Light winds becoming north to northeasterly 20 to 30 km per hour in the middle of the day. Sun protection is recommended from 8:50 a.m. to 2:40 p.m. and UV index is predicted to reach 7, that is high. And on Sunday, again minimum will be 15 and maximum will be 25. Possible chances of rain are 70%. Brisbane area will be partly cloudy. Light winds becoming easterly 15 to 20 km per hour during the afternoon, then becoming light during the evening. Sun protection is recommended from 8:50 a.m. to 2:40 p.m. UV index is predicted to reach 7, that is high. Till then, stay safe and have a good day. Thanks.
Wonderful. That's great news for this weekend. As we know, Sunday, Father's Day, and people would be going out, probably having get-togethers and everything like that. So it's good to see that the weather's going to be holding out for us. Well, right now, let's get our update. And as we know, there's been a lot of talk about the borders. You know, there's been war on the borders, as there's reckoned. And it's about opening the border or not opening the border, whether Queensland is doing the right thing or not. And of course, Premier Daniel Andrews, whether his extension and his handling of the situation is okay or not. And of course, we know that the Prime Minister is meeting with all the heads and trying to see if the border can be opened or reopened soon. Well, as I see it, I mean, I think the border should still remain closed if everyone stays in their state. But the local economy should open up. You know, restaurants, people should be allowed to go to, and functions should take place. Of course, with all the precautions and thermal metering at the entrance. So if you do not pass that, you do not enter. But why just put people in the homes when they could be at least going out? But that's for another day. Right now, let's join our Premier and see and get our update from what's happening or what we can expect for the weekend.
At least Lydia's got a nice... and good morning to all of our listeners out there as well. Well, in some excellent news for Queensland today, can I say that we have had 0 overnight cases. Well done, Queensland. And this is exactly the hard work of everybody that's getting us to this point. But of course, we know that we're still not out of the woods yet, but I'm so pleased that we have got 0 cases today. That means our active cases are 25, our total confirmed cases are 1,128, and in the last 24 hours, we have had 13,778 tests. So once again, a big thank you to everybody who's gone out there and been tested. So of course we have our specialist care unit that will go live today. We understand that of course this is a very, very difficult time for families. I know that, people know that, and we want to make sure that if people in northern New South Wales need to get to those specialist appointments, we have a special dedicated unit that will be there for them. That will go live today. There is a team of 8 specialists that will involve doctors, nurses, paramedics and also social workers, because this is often a distressing time for people. I know that. My government knows that, and we are here to help people during this critical time. In total, in the unit for exemptions, we have a team of 80 people working on this. So this is about the government working in the best interests of families during these very difficult times. We did not cause this pandemic. This is a world pandemic. No one asked for this. We know that families are not seeing each other at the moment. There are international borders up. Scott Morrison has put out that that is going to be extended for another 3 months. So families are not going to be united for Christmas, and that is going to be very tough on families. And we know it's going to be tough on families over the next few months because we are in this global pandemic. The other issue I just wanted to address before handing over to Dr. Young is that we've had some concerns about borders going to Moree. And of course we want to make sure that we are putting the best interests of these young people front and centre. And that is why we will be adding Moree to our travel bubble. This is going to be great news for those families to ensure that they can be home for school holidays. Yes, boarding school students, yes. So I'm happy to hand over to Dr. Young and then we'll take some questions. Thanks, Dr. Young.
So we're now 8 months into this pandemic and we unfortunately know we've got quite a while to go, but here in Queensland we do have it under control. So no new cases overnight is excellent. So at the moment we have 30 cases related to that cluster. That's the cluster with the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre and the cluster with the Training Academy. And we've been working through that to make sure that we didn't get chains of transmission related to either of those clusters. We're now down to 25 active cases, so we've already seen people from those clusters have their disease and get better and resolve, which is really good. We need to keep that going. So I know that those restrictions are difficult for those aged care facilities in particular, but they are so important. So we'll be keeping a very, very close eye on that aged care facility at Laidley. The staff there, with the support of the Westmoreton Hospital and Health Service, did a fantastic job, and we hope with all of that work that none of those residents will get COVID-19, because we know that our residents who live in aged care are the most vulnerable residents. And we've now had, each time we have a cluster of cases, we have one aged care facility involved, and that's where we have to focus so much of our attention. That is critical. So I am very sorry that people can't go and visit their relatives in aged care homes when something like this happens, but it's just vital that we keep those people safe, because unfortunately we have seen that once it gets into an aged care facility you do see deaths. So that's tragic. So I ask people just to be patient a bit longer, and we will open those facilities to visitors again as soon as we possibly can. So today is the first day of 0 cases related to those 2 clusters. We just need to follow that going forward. Then a few other things. I've been working very, very closely with my counterpart in New South Wales, and we've been sharing a lot of information. And with that information, I'm very confident that Moree is a safe place to add into our border zone that we're looking at for New South Wales. And we know that's particularly important. I went and looked into it in great detail because unfortunately when that supermarket burnt down, they didn't have a lot of options. They of course could travel into Queensland, but the distances, if you look at them, it would be quicker for them to travel down into Moree. So for a number of reasons, but the most important reason of all, of course, is that it is safe for us to do that. So Moree will be included in the New South Wales border zone going forwards. Remembering, of course, that this could change, but at this point in time, New South Wales does have control of their outbreak, and they've been able to limit it to other parts of New South Wales. The risk, of course, is that people in those other parts can travel up into the northern part of New South Wales, but I discuss that risk every single day with my counterpart in New South Wales, and I know what is happening, and they're very proactive in sorting that through, so that's really important for us. Then I did want to mention, to make sure that people understand that this is in place. Last week we treated 900 New South Wales residents in our hospitals in Queensland along the border. We are continuing to provide essential and emergency health care to people who live in northern New South Wales, because we've always done that. Traditionally, Queensland provides that care. There has been no change to that. Whatever people may hear or learn about, that has not changed. So that's why we've stood up that specialist unit to make sure that people, if they don't know, that they immediately seek advice and they don't delay that necessary and essential health care. Well, I am in the health business. I'm the Chief Health Officer, so of course I'm always going to make sure that people can get the health care they need, and they are getting it. And I assure every Queenslander that, of course, you're getting good, solid, safe health care, and we are providing health care in a very, very safe way to people from northern New South Wales. Our hospitals are managing those people, so there is no risk to anyone else who comes to any of our facilities. So that's very important as well. So I also wanted to mention the fantastic work that's been done by Queenslanders throughout the state coming forward to get tested if they're unwell. We're seeing every single day around 10,000 Queenslanders come forward, and that is just critical. We always, I've said this many times, we have to find the first case in a cluster, not the 30th case. It's the first case, because then we can stop that chain of transmission so we don't get more and more cases. So please just keep coming forward. Any symptoms you would have seen recently, we've got people with unusual symptoms, a bit of abdominal pain. So any symptom, please come forward and get tested. You don't need to come forward and get tested if you have no symptoms. If you are perfectly well, unless a health officer asks you to get tested because you're in a high-risk cohort, you're in one of those aged care facilities or one of those outbreaks, you do not need to come forward and get tested if you are perfectly well. But any symptom at all or any fever, it's really important to come forward and get tested. Thank you.
So there, the message is very, very clear that if you need to get tested, please do get tested. But if you don't need to, there's no need to go and clog up the system there, because there have been long waiting queues out there. But it is wonderful news that the way Queensland has been able to manage it. Of course, there is always the two parts of any debate, and people, there's so I've seen on social media, the government being criticised for closing the borders, but look, economic terms or health. So health priorities to me, my personal way of thinking is that health priorities always comes first. You always put health first before anything else. So, it's a big task and for the authorities to try and keep that balance to make sure, whatever can be open is open, and also that, the general public is kept safe as well. Well, right now, let's take a quick look at the headlines and the key news for today, courtesy of ABC, and then we will go to the news in general.
Territory leaders are set to lock horns with the Prime Minister over border closures at today's National Cabinet, with a plan for coronavirus hotspots to be keenly debated. Scott Morrison wants the states and territories to agree to a national definition of high-risk areas. The plan would allow movement across borders before Christmas. New South Wales and Victoria are willing to consider the idea, but other states are holding firm. British Cabinet ministers have defended the potential appointment of former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott as trade advisor, but the pressure around the decision is mounting. The job would see him advise the country on post-Brexit trade policy. Opponents of the move believe Mr Abbott's socially conservative views make him unfit for the job. A Queensland vet is one of 2 Australians missing on a live export ship that has capsized off southern Japan. Lucas Order previously worked as a vet for the Gold Coast Equine Clinic and also studied at James Cook University in Townsville. It's believed 43 crew members were on board the ship when it sank in rough seas as it was transporting cattle to China. One survivor has been rescued by the Japanese Coast Guard in the East China Sea.
And that's news in brief as with the headlines for today. When we look at what else is happening out there, let's look at the number of cases worldwide, 26.1 million, and recovery at 17.3, and 864 deaths recorded. National Cabinet met today, and of course on the agenda was the border closures, a nationally agreed upon definition of a hotspot and an agricultural code, which will see seasonal workers able to travel across state lines, and that's on the agenda. Victoria has recorded 130 new coronavirus cases on Thursday, including 35 cases of healthcare workers. Premier Daniel Andrews, whom we will hear from just down the track, played down the leaked early draft of the easing restrictions to the state, which showed Melbourne's stage 4 lockdown could be extended for 2 weeks. Now, there's a case of where people try and get hold of all the internal documents, and someone leaked out that document, which was an outdated document, and of course it was a draft, and then they go off that. So attendees at a Sydney gym have been directed to self-isolate as New South Wales recorded 9 new community cases on Thursday. After aged care visits in Sydney area were restricted, an announcement easing the rules before Father's Day is expected to be announced today. So as we know, Father's Day this weekend. Now, talking about gyms, once again, there's different views. I'm talking about the 2 buildings that we are here in right next to each other. One has the gym open, the other doesn't. Well, I do go to my gym because I have to, because otherwise everyone just seems to be, busting around the belly, as they say, very hard to control. But you have to take your precautions, make sure that you go. With me, I personally have a set of gloves every day. Chuck it out in the gym before you come out. Go in with a new set of gloves every day. So Victoria's inquiry into hotel quarantine is sitting again today, with a police officer who worked in the system as well as government officials due to give evidence. There are now 26.1 million, as I said before, coronavirus cases worldwide, according to Johns Hopkins University tally. That's the tally that which we follow every day. And the global death toll has passed 864,000. So that's the world news at the moment. And we will look at some other breaking news as we quickly go down. Now, the news that has come across is Zali Stagel, Helen Haynes and Rebecca Sharkey furious after being denied a chance to speak on environmental laws. Let's follow that story.
We've been trying to find out all day whether the government intended to gag debate and bring the bill on in a rush, or would it allow proper debate. At 4:25, when the House would normally adjourn at 4:30, Minister Lee decided to stand up and gag it, and this farce ensued. It is shameful.
This is high farce, and this is an absolute affront to our democracy. And I join with Zali and with Rebecca and with members of Parliament of any decency in this House to be outraged by this.
This isn't North Korea. This is not China, but it feels like we're in a dictatorship.
Well, there you go. Quite loud and clear. The message is coming out there, and they are furious. Well, right now, let's cross over to New South Wales and see what's happening there as we join the Premier. And she talks about the situation in New South Wales.
Premier, thank you for your time.
Pleasure, Lee.
Queensland says that it will only open the border to New South Wales after its southern neighbour has had 28 days free from community transmission. A lot of Queensland residents might say, well, that's fair enough, we don't want the virus up here.
Well, look, I don't know anywhere on the planet where they keep their economy moving, jobs going and have zero community transmission. In fact, I don't even know countries or states where there's an elimination strategy where the whole place is shut down where you don't have any cases. Look at New Zealand, that's a case in point. So long as the pandemic is with us, there is always that risk. But what is important is whether you're able to manage that risk. And I think New South Wales has demonstrated, notwithstanding the huge pressure on us given what was happening in Victoria and our geographic proximity, that we are managing to control the spread of the virus in a reasonable way. Transmission rates are very low. In fact, transmission rates of unknown cases are very low. Most of the cases we've had today and previous days have been from known sources. The target they're giving us is pretty much unachievable.
Yesterday, the Queensland Premier opened her borders to allow hundreds of AFL officials to head up from Melbourne in coming weeks. Does that set any sort of precedent to allow the residents of northern New South Wales to cross the border for essential reasons such as medical care or compassionate grounds?
Oh, look, I would really hope so. I had a conversation with her yesterday about at least allowing doctors and physicians to come across the border. We had an example of a country hospital on the border town, one of the border towns, where they get a GP for 2 weeks out of 4 every month. But because of the border closure, they haven't been able to get the GP because the GP flies in from Queensland, and then when they're going back home, they can't afford to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. So I suspect the Queensland government's response to having the AFL contingent up there will be, oh, they're doing their quarantine and it's COVID safe. But I guess that's little consolation for people who are just struggling to get medical services, reunite with loved ones, or just carry out basic businesses. Because for those of us that don't live in border towns, we don't understand the concept enough about one community. They don't see the border as any division. They see themselves as one community, and we have to understand that.
On the Ruby Princess debacle, the independent investigation found that the most serious error was the judgment made by the New South Wales Health Department to let people disembark, and that decision led to 900 infections and 28 deaths. None of the people who made those decisions were asked to resign, despite that terrible error of judgment. Do any of the people involved in those decisions currently work on managing coronavirus in New South Wales?
Well, Lee, can I firstly say our condolences to everybody impacted and people who are still going through trauma on that, and in particular the 62 people who got the virus secondary or tertiary because of the people who disembarked. I read the report from cover to cover. Brett Walker, in his recommendations and in his conclusions, found it wasn't a systemic error, but it was human error, and he did not recommend the removal of any staff.
As you said, it's a human error, and it was a stuff-up. Shouldn't you be able to now assure members of the public that their safety isn't reliant on the judgment of the people that made those errors?
But I think, Lee, what we've demonstrated in New South Wales is that we have a public health team that is second to none. And a pandemic is never perfect. Mistakes have been made, and I can't guarantee mistakes won't be made again. But what I can guarantee is that our public health network in New South Wales, I would contend, is world best practice. Does that mean perfect? Not by a long shot. But does it mean that as far as our comparison with other parts of the world is concerned, given our population, given our proximity to Victoria with 55 border crossings and the number of cases there, the way that we've managed to suppress the community transmission, I think it's a credit to the public health team. But as I said, it doesn't mean human error won't occur. It doesn't mean, mistakes won't happen again. We'll have good days and bad days during the pandemic. But what's important is to learn from every single mistake that occurs, to learn from every new scenario, and then apply that to the future. And I just want to assure the public that I have every confidence in our public health team. I'm extremely proud of them. But it doesn't mean people won't make mistakes, especially if they're looking at something they've never seen before or dealing with a situation they've never had to deal with before. But I can say with confidence we've learned a lot since that time.
Premier, thanks for your time this evening.
Yes, it's been a learning curve, but there have been some serious accusations made there on the judgment, and which has also had the community spread and, of course, loss of life. Well, that was the Premier, but right now let's get from the New South Wales Health and look at the number of cases.
12 new cases of COVID-19 were reported to 8 o'clock last night, Wednesday the 2nd of September. The total number of cases in New South Wales is now 3,902, and there have been 29,607 tests reported compared to 20,083 the previous day. There have now been 2,235,992 tests carried out in New South Wales. Of the 12 new cases to 8 o'clock last night, 3 were locally acquired, including 2 in a southwestern Sydney family and a case in Parkes with no identified source at this point. One is linked to a previously reported case in southeastern Sydney whose source is still under investigation. 3 are returned travellers in hotel quarantine, and 5 are linked to known cases or clusters. 3 of these contacts are previously reported cases linked to the August CBD cluster, and the total link to this cluster is now 52. Among today's new cases is a contact of a previously reported case in Sydney in a student at St Paul's Catholic College Greystanes, and a new case in Girraween Public School. This brings a total number of cases linked to those schools to 12. Close contacts are isolating and the schools have been cleaned and will reopen today. The source of the original infection has not been identified at this point. A case reported yesterday attended a church service at Life in the Spirit Ministry, Lynn Parade, Prestons, on Sunday the 30th of August from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Anyone who attended this service is considered a close contact and must be tested for COVID-19 and self-isolate for 14 days. That is until midnight on the 13th of September, even if this test is negative.
So there you go. The numbers are still coming across, and I personally feel it's still too early to, ease all those restrictions. But right now, let's look at the numbers in Victoria. 113 new cases and 15 more deaths.
First things first, there are 19,336 aggregate cases of coronavirus in Victoria over the entire pandemic. That's 113 new cases since my update yesterday. There have been, I'm sad to report, now 591 Victorians who have passed away as a result of this global pandemic. 9 of those deaths occurred prior to yesterday, 8 of them in one facility. So as we've foreshadowed a number of times this week, there will be, because of mandatory reporting changes and the reconciliation of data between different agencies, there will be from time to time deaths that have come in from previous days, and we'll report those to you faithfully. Our thoughts, of course, and our best wishes are with, and our sincere condolences are with each of those families. They include 4 males and 3 females in their 80s, 2 males and 6 females in their 90s. 14 of those 15 deaths are linked to aged care outbreaks. There are 361 Victorians that are currently in hospital. 20 of those are receiving intensive care, and 15 of those 20 are on a ventilator. Now, a total now of 2,331,261 test results have been received. That represents an increase of some 82,309 since yesterday. But let me just take you through how we account for that very substantial jump. As you know, many weeks ago, in fact, we moved to an exclusive focus on positive test results. They are, after all, the people that we want to get to as fast as we can, have them isolate and have the appropriate public health response. This jump in tests is largely attributable to a very large batch of negative tests that have now been brought to book and included in the overall total. But yesterday's tests, so the normal number that I would report to you, is in fact 17,098. That's the results that have been received in the last 24 hours. And can I just thank each and every one of those almost 17,100 Victorians who yesterday got their results because they had gone and got tested a day or so earlier. That's a really impressive thing. Those numbers are up again at I think a level that gives us a greater degree of comfort. We're very grateful to each of those people, and again I'll send that clear message and that clear request to every single Victorian. If you've got any symptoms, even the mildest of symptoms, please come forward and get tested at one of the more than 190 test sites across the state. It is critically important, central in fact, to opening up because it is at the heart of us understanding and having the clearest picture about how much virus is out there, chains of transmission, how the virus is behaving. There are 4,361 cases with an unknown source. 24 of those investigations have been closed out and added to that total since yesterday's report. There are 337 healthcare workers who are active cases. We send our best wishes to all of them and thank them for the amazing job that they're doing as the last line of defence for all of us against this widely infectious virus. And there are some 2,295 active cases across Victoria. In regional local government areas under stage 3, so the regional split is 126 cases, so those numbers are low and are staying low, and that is a very good thing. Those communities that we had significant concerns about some time ago, Greater Geelong, 38 active cases, just 2 new overnight. Greater Bendigo, 9 active cases, 1 new overnight. And Ballarat has 4 active cases and no new cases overnight.
So, he's comfortable with the numbers there, and I must congratulate, him on getting to that level, because it was very, very hard once the outbreak happened there as well. Now, one of the things making news lately has been, these days everyone has a mobile phone, and what that gives is, gives everyone the liberty to go and shoot and, record whatever is happening around you. And lately, police has come under that a lot. Whenever they're doing their duty, discharging their duty, someone's there with the phone recording them. There was one last week of a protester who had not sought the required permits, but when police approached her, there were other people who were, yelling at the police and, quite abusive, I must say. But, you have a mobile phone and you can go and post things of like, but does that give you the liberty, to be rude and, of course, record each and every event that's happening out there while police are discharging their duties? Of course, no one ever advocates for undue use of force. But if someone's doing their duty and rightfully performing, you should let them and do their duty. And now people take it upon themselves and become very abusive because they know that's being recorded, and they can go and share that content online and get public support behind them. But this case of the arrest that was made in Victoria, Victoria police officers who arrested the woman over that inciting protest acted entirely reasonably, according to Assistant Commissioner Luke Cornelis, and he and his officers entirely reasonably when they arrested that woman for inciting an anti-lockdown protest on Saturday. So let's hear from the Assistant Commissioner of Victoria Police.
I'd be the first to acknowledge the optics, for want of a better description, of arresting a pregnant female. It's never going to look good. The optics of arresting someone who's pregnant is terrible. And so, of course, we were very keen to understand the circumstances and consider whether or not in all the circumstances that action was appropriate. And I can say to you, based on the briefings that have been provided to me and my colleague, Assistant Commissioner Cindy Millen, we're absolutely satisfied that in those circumstances the members behaved appropriately and in accordance with our policy. Now, I'll make some observations about handcuffing policy. We don't have a rule that in every case when you arrest someone, we handcuff them. The decision to handcuff someone is based on a risk assessment, and that risk assessment takes into account a number of factors, both how an individual presents to the police when they attend to effect an arrest, but also it relates to our knowledge of how we might have engaged with that person or how that person might have engaged with us on prior occasions. And speaking generally, because I don't want to cast aspersions on individuals, these risk assessments are made day in, day out by our people. And the risk assessment is based, as I say, on the circumstances in the given moment and also on the basis of any prior dealings that we've had with that individual. And it's entirely appropriate for our members to take all of those factors into account. And it's clear to me that our members did so on this occasion. The other point is that once we handcuff someone, they're not handcuffed for all time. And in this particular context, bear in mind that the members were attending the premises of this individual with a search warrant, and they were there to conduct a search warrant in the pursuit of evidence which might lead towards us determining whether in fact the offence of incitement had been made out. Now, this wasn't some casual encounter. This was our members attending a premises to execute a search warrant because we believed, on reasonable grounds, that the individual and the premises which was the subject of that search would provide to us evidence of involvement in that serious offence of inciting protest. And in this occasion, it was a protest in Ballarat. Now, when you execute a search warrant, and this is the case for any members, of course, there is a heightened risk around that. And in the initial stages, when you enter a premises to execute a search warrant, you want to make sure that everyone at that place is accounted for. You want to make sure that people who are there and your members are safe. And so within that context, again, that's a number of risk factors which are taken into account as to whether or not someone might be handcuffed.
So as the Assistant Commissioner of Victoria Police, Luke, that the officers acted entirely reasonably in discharging their duties. Well, you know, there's always the two sides of the coin. They are there to deliver the services, protect the general public, as they say, and maintain the law and order on the land. And they do have a tough job because, you know, again, it is this balancing act. Of course, undue use of force is never encouraged. Well, right now, the topic for this week or this month is, of course, we know that this is the Blood Cancer Awareness Month. And with that, we know that every 36 minutes, another Aussie begins their battle with blood cancer. In Australia, 41 people are diagnosed with blood cancer every day, and that is one person every 36 minutes. Genomic testing is crucial to improving blood cancer diagnosis, prognosis, and personalized treatment, but is widely unavailable to many patients. This Blood Cancer Awareness Month, the Snowdown Foundation is encouraging Aussies to create a national discussion about blood cancer by wearing red and posting to social media with the hashtag #ItCouldBeMe. So with that, we'd like to also talk to Jeff. Now, Jeff Nyson is a melanoma patient. In 2014, Jeff, at the age of 40, was diagnosed with the multiple myeloma, a terminal blood cancer. When Jeff was diagnosed, he was given just 10 short years to live, which was devastating news for him as well as his wife Sarah, 2 young kids, his family and friends. Despite the adversity, Jeff has found the strength to lead by example and give back to the community that has provided so much support to him. With that, we'd like to welcome Jeff to the show. So welcome, Jeff.
Hello, Umesh. How are you? Thank you for having us. And thanks for the opportunity to raise awareness about blood cancer because as you've quite rightly pointed out, with someone being diagnosed every 36 minutes, it's...
Yes, and once again, Jeff, welcome again to the show. And I'd like to begin my session here today with my first question is, can you tell us a little bit more about blood cancer, especially right here in Australia?
Yeah, look, blood cancer, there's 3 main groups of blood cancer, being the leukemia, the lymphomas, and the myelomas. The nature of the diseases is because they're what's known as a circulating tumour, typically you don't get a tumour that can be easily removed. So chemotherapy and immunotherapy treatments are really the main ways of treating these as diseases. And sadly, they are still terminal, or many of them are terminal diseases, which is just why it's so important that we need to continue to raise awareness of these cancers, and we need to continue to raise much needed funds for blood cancer research so that we can turn these diseases from being terminal diseases into chronic diseases, you know, diseases that we die with as opposed to dying from.
And Jeff rightfully said there, and it is that changing it from a disease that can be cured rather than a disease that we know that we're going to die from. So, Jeff, moving on, so can blood cancer be prevented, and, is it preventable?
Well, there's not enough known about blood cancer at the moment to say that we can prevent them. For myeloma, for example, they believe that it's a genetic issue that occurs through exposure to nasty chemicals like petroleum hydrocarbons and pesticides and what have you. But there's still a lot more research that's needed so that we understand exactly how blood cancers come about. But this is where genomic testing is really, really important as well, because they've got the technology now where they can look at the DNA of the cancer themselves, the cancer cells, and how they replicate and how they live effectively. And so to continue to look at the genomic testing of these cancers enables the doctors to know more about them. And once we know more about them, then we can start preventing them, which is a little way off yet, but it's exciting that this level of research is being done.
Well, as you've said, that genomic testing is what is needed. So why is access to genomic testing so important for blood cancer patients?
Thank you. Look, when I was first diagnosed, I received a number of chemotherapies. Now, the nature of chemotherapy itself is it's a chemical that they put into the patient, and these chemotherapy treatments used to go in and kill cells within your body indiscriminately, often fast replicating cells, which is cancer cells are recognized as being fast replicating, but it also creates much devastation to the patient through damage to the gastrointestinal tract. You lose your hair. A lot of damage is done. But the reason why genomic testing is so important is because what they're looking to do now is they're looking to tailor chemotherapy or tailor treatments to the individual, using treatments like immunotherapy drugs, so that rather than putting in chemicals that kill the cancer, they're effectively enabling your immune system to better identify the cancer and enabling your immune system to do the job that it's meant to do. So this genomic testing, it's effectively tailoring it's understanding the body better and understanding the cancer better, so that we can get tailored chemotherapy treatments as opposed to generic ones. So it's an exciting space simply because side effects affect quality of life of cancer patients just so significantly, and it's exciting to think that that's on the improve.
Jeff, how can patients here in Australia access genomic testing?
At the moment, genomic testing is only done in the main centres of Melbourne and Sydney. They're looking at expanding into WA, but it's through funding organisations like Snowdome, who is funding this research, that enables us to access this treatment. So the more trials that are up and going, the more it will become commonplace for patients to be able to access this treatment. And once it becomes better understood, that's when more patients are going to be able to access it. So at the moment, what we need to do is we need to continue to fund these trials, and organisations like Snowdome Foundation are the ones that are primarily funding the trials and enabling these trials to occur through organisations like Peter Mac and the Walter Eliza Hall Institute and what have you. So I guess what we need to do is continue to support organisations like Snowdome. We need to continue to raise awareness of blood cancers And that way, with the light shone on these diseases, they'll get the attention they deserve, and more people will be able to access this life-saving treatment and enable the research to occur.
Well, Jeff rightfully said, and thank you so much for reaching out to us to share this vital information with our viewers and our listeners. So what can people in Australia do to support those who are affected by blood cancer?
Look, I think awareness is a big hurdle. You know, at the end of the day, if you know people that have got cancer, compassion and support should be front of mind. You know, being in that person's space and being there for them, because you know they've really got to go through some challenging times, because both the challenges of the cancer and also the treatments can be quite challenging as well. So you know, just be there for them, be a friend, but at the same time, we need to raise awareness, because as you quite rightly suggested in your introduction, every 36 minutes someone in Australia is diagnosed with blood cancer. And so many people have it or are affected by it. And by affected, I mean they either know someone or they may have it themselves. So there's a lot of support that's required in order to help people with blood cancers live as long a life as they can, and the best possible life that they can.
Jeff, once again, thank you so much for sharing that information with us. And ladies and gentlemen, if you can, please go and support that. So Jeff, once again, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Umesh, and thank you for the opportunity to continue to raise awareness of blood cancers, especially in Blood Cancer Awareness Month. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you are. You know, that's Jeff Nyson, you know, and he has been a victim himself, and now he's tending to help and support. So there's many, you know, organizations such as the Snowdon Foundation, who always reach out to us to get that message out to the community via our multimedia channels. So it is good to see that, you know, there are people who are working behind the scenes on this kind of projects, but they also, you know, trying to reach out to the wider community, to every section of the community, to get that message out there, because often we don't know and we don't realize how much work is done in so many different fields there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's go and look at some of the events. But before that, don't forget that today at 4 p.m. we have the migration update with Suman Dua, and she will be live here from this studio, and we'll be talking about the latest changes in immigration, migration laws, students' issues, and we'll take live questions and answers during that session as well. Well, here's the list of functions and events that are taking place, and of course tomorrow we'll do a special program on Father's Day. So there are, ladies and gentlemen, quite a lot of functions and events that are taking place, and of course we know that there's a lot that are taking place virtually as well. Of course, if you're going to any function or event, please do double check with the organizers, as the current restrictions are in place, and we know that many other functions are being planned, like an online or virtual seminar. And yesterday was one of the first face-to-face functions that we attended. That was the 119th anniversary of Australian flag, and we had that function in front of King George Square in City Hall, in front of the City Hall. And yesterday the bridge, Story Bridge, was lit up in the flag's colour, and it was quite a proud moment for us to see that. And of course, yesterday we had a detailed talk with Charita Deshpande, the Sales and Marketing Manager of Brisbane Indian Times and Australian Indian Radio, and she talked about the package deals that are available. So, if you have any ad or any functions that you need to promote, please do contact Charita Deshpande. And of course, Australian Indian Radio and Brisbane Indian Times are proud to be hosting this show for you. But right now, a very quick word from one of our sponsors.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globenetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 सैंडगेट रोड, बुंदल, क्वींसलैंड। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, रियल एस्टेट इज अवर वर्ल्ड।
And real estate is the world. And another sponsor for us is Cyrus Migration. But today at 4 p.m. we'll go live with Suman Dua. I hope to catch you then to get all the updates on the migration situation and what the current rules and regulations are, what are the changes, and all those up-to-date information. And we will take live questions on the show as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, right now it's goodbye from me. Until we meet next, be good, but most importantly, stay safe.